How's it going?
Nico.
How you feeling?
I'm good, man.
Good.
I'm excited for this one because it's a topic that has been coming up a lot lately. I don't want to sound like a broken record about the whole Ozempic, Wegovy, semaglutide stuff, but one thing that has become increasingly, I think, important to address with members and clients is the idea of the risks of muscle loss. Right. And so I have a couple clients who are taking Ozempic, right, or Wegovy or something like that, right? And one of the risk factors of it is losing muscle, right? And so I thought today, rather than talking about specifically how that relates to the semaglutide drugs, more or less just talking about how that happens, period, in dieting and in weight loss.
Absolutely.
Right? And so when people, in order to lose weight, obviously you know this, but to lose weight, you need to be in a caloric deficit, right? You need to be burning more calories than you're consuming, right? And what happens if you're in too significant of a caloric deficit, or if you are not doing strength training of any kind, your body is not really as discerning about whether or not it's going to lose muscle or fat.
Right. Exactly.
Because bottom line, our bodies don't really care if we're sexy.
It's true. It's just trying to survive.
Right? It's like, can you pick up the stick?
Yeah.
Right? Can you build the hut?
Yeah.
Right? You know, I don't care if you can barbell curl X. Right? Hey guys, quick break here. Just want to ask you guys to like, subscribe, and share the content with others who you think would benefit if you found this video helpful or any of our videos. Also, please comment. At the end of the day, we do these videos for you. We love your feedback. We'll always reply to the comments in the comment section and keep them in mind for future videos. And so strength training in high protein dieting is pretty much, or at least enough protein, is the one way that we can combat the muscle loss, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because at the end of the day, working out is really our bodies just adapting to a stimulus.
Yep.
Similarly to when we go out in the sun, we get some
Works the same way, yeah.
Works the same way. We get some tan, maybe me a little bit of a pink.
Yeah.
Right? But if it's wintertime, not necessarily, right? Because the stimulus isn't strong enough.
Right.
So same thing, when we aren't sending that stimulus to our bodies to say, hey, keep on this muscle when we're in these caloric deficits, we lose muscle. So I had this epiphany recently of thinking about not only these drugs, these weight loss drugs, but also yo-yo dieting, period.
Yeah.
Right? The idea of kind of doing a more restrictive diet, losing a lot of weight, not really having a transition strategy, and then gaining the weight back because it's too restrictive or whatever. Then you gain that weight back.
Yeah.
So I want to walk people through the number side of this for a moment.
Okay.
So if you lose, you've seen these with the scans, right? With our eVolt 360.
Right.
So we have a bioimpedance analysis machine. That's a way of measuring body composition right over here. And it'll tell you readings. And so one of the things that will happen is someone will lose, like, let's say 30 pounds overall over the course of months, and they may have lost 5 pounds of muscle. That's actually pretty good.
That would be good. That's a good example, yeah.
That's a good ratio.
Good ratio, yeah.
Right? But if you're not strength training and you're in a severe caloric deficit,
you're going to lose a lot more muscle.
Exactly. But what's crazy, again, is in this story of the yo-yoing, if the idea is you lose a bunch of weight and gain a bunch of weight back, think about this for a sec. This is where it was like, boom, light bulb. I have to talk about this. If you lose 50 pounds, let's say, right, and you weren't strength training, it was a severe caloric restriction, and you lost, let's say, 30 pounds of fat, 20 pounds of muscle. Okay? Then you gain the weight back.
Yep.
Now you're just in a deficit of 20 pounds of muscle.
Right.
So you actually have another 20 pounds of fat from when you started,
That's crazy.
and you have a 20-pound muscle loss. And that's what people do
That's crazy.
on these like on these like
Strict,
restrictive like weight loss diets, and when they aren't strength training or getting sufficient protein. And it doubly applies to, maybe not exactly doubly, but it especially applies to these weight loss drugs, because they make you even more prone to muscle loss.
Yeah.
So I think that's just something I wanted to say, that
That's huge, yeah.
I'm scared for a lot of people, because I don't think they realize losing weight, all weight loss isn't created equal. And so if you're not doing it the right way, and especially if you end up just going back to where you were, chances are you're not the same person of when, I just gained the weight back. No, you gained the weight back and lost 20 pounds of muscle, 10 pounds of muscle, 30.
Yeah.
Think how terrible that is.
Yeah, that's really bad.
Right?
Because a lot of people that have weight loss goals don't necessarily, they want to lose weight, but they really want to lose body fat, right? So,
yeah,
you don't want to lose too much of that muscle.
if at all.
Yeah.
I mean,
You want to limit that as much as possible.
I think I don't know how you, like, are you looking for any particular ratio when people are in the weight loss process? Like, let's say, for example, I know you don't necessarily use the EVOLT all that much, but like, does anything come to mind for you?
As far as a ratio?
Yeah, like for X amount of pounds of fat to X amount of pounds of muscle.
Not really. I'm curious to know do you have a ratio?
I wouldn't say it's an exact one, right?
Okay.
Because I've heard so many different
Yeah.
opinions, research, studies, etc. And there's not necessarily a consensus, but I would say the less, the better.
For sure, yeah.
So it's just, I would say maybe I've heard a 4-to-1 ratio is a good ratio.
That sounds right.
For every 4
Yeah.
pounds of fat, you lose a pound of muscle. Ideally would be obviously
Zero,
and ideally would be maybe you gain muscle
Yeah.
in the process, right?
Yeah.
Which is really only going to happen for beginners.
Yeah, in the beginning stages, yeah.
Because there's just so many changes. That's the
Newbie
beginner
gains.
The newbie gains,
Yeah.
exactly. And some people, talk about recomping, right? But again, the body's really not necessarily designed to be highly efficient at building muscle and losing weight at the same time. So you're lucky if that happens, right? But try to keep that ratio as low as possible. But again, I would say being very conscious of the body's susceptibility to losing muscle while in a severe caloric diet restriction, as well as combine that with not strength training while you're doing that. Everyone needs to be very conscious of that.
For sure, yeah.
And do their due diligence, because that's a scary prospect. Especially think, what if you've made your whole life out of doing that? Which I'm sure we both know people.
Yeah, oh yeah, I could think of a few.
Yo-yoing.
Yeah.
I'm always just doing a new diet.
Yeah.
So it's like, what if it was 20 pounds of muscle, then 10 pounds of muscle,
Yeah.
then 5, then whatever.
Wow.
Maybe somewhere along the line you gained some of it back, but you lost a lot of muscle and gained a lot of fat.
Yeah.
It's I think a lot of people just need to pause and think about that for a sec.
I think that's really eye-opening.
Yeah. Do you have anything you want to add?
Not really. I mean, for anyone listening, do you have any... I mean, I know there's a lot of factors, but anything outside of like strength training and beating protein goals and things like that to minimize those ratios from getting too out of hand?
I would say...
Depends how strict of a deficit you're in and stuff too, but...
Yeah, that would be the one. So, the more significant... So, like, let's say hypothetically, I'm not recommending anyone eat 1,000 calories a day. I'm just saying this for easy math, right? So if your body needs 1,000 calories and you eat 500 calories, that's 50% of your caloric needs. So you're going to lose a lot of weight in that scenario, right? Or you're going to lose it faster in that scenario. But because the gap is so large, that's actually a bad example. So let's say you need, we'll just use a real life example. So if you need 2,000 calories a day, or 3,000 even, let's say, 3,000, you're a bigger guy. Maybe you're 6'4", right, 250, bigger guy. So if you need 3,000 calories a day, and you're eating 1,500 calories, right, that's a significant deficit, right? 1,500 calories a day is a lot, right?
Yeah.
It's almost half a pound,
Yeah.
right? So by the end of the week, you may have lost 4 pounds, right? That's a lot. And so that person may lose weight fast, but
Yeah.
again, to your point, the goal isn't necessarily just to lose weight.
Right.
The
And
goal
it's
is
not
to
sustainable either that way.
well, there's that too,
Yeah.
right? So that's even like project out in the
Yeah.
future, right? There's that problem. But even in the short term, you're going to be way more susceptible to losing muscle.
Yeah.
Even if you are strength training and eating protein.
For sure, yeah.
Right? And so someone may just be better off eating closer to their caloric needs, but, still being in a deficit, right? So maybe the person who eats 2,500 calories when they really need 3,000, they're not going to be as susceptible to losing muscle.
Right.
All things equal in terms of strength training and protein intake,
Yeah.
right? But then again, you have to be in enough of a caloric deficit to make it exciting, right? Because there's that other side of it. Hey, being a half pound of muscle fat loss per week, well, that sounds good in theory, and maybe that would be best for maintaining your muscle. But for someone who really wants to lose weight because they feel they need that affirmation that they're doing the right things and they're making progress,
Yeah.
that may not be fast enough. So that's that balance.
For sure.
It needs to be enough weight loss to keep someone encouraged, but again, I just think people need to pause and be really considerate of that because it's dangerous.
It is.
And not only that, but I mean, you and I did a little research before this. Just what did it say? Some of the risks of yo-yo dieting: muscle loss and fat gain over time, slower metabolism, increased risk of heart disease, high blood pressure, and insulin resistance. And insulin resistance, that's the whole reason a lot of these weight loss drugs exist in the first place.
Yeah.
They started off as diabetic medications, right? And negative impact on mental health, guilt, shame, binge eating cycles.
Sure, yeah.
So, I mean, all things considered, I think it's really important, just to, we could do maybe another podcast on this sometime, but I think it's just all of the things we've talked about, but also if you are going to do a diet of some sort, have a transition plan out to where you can somehow make that part of your lifestyle, or at least find whatever your new normal is, so it's not just one extreme to the other.
Right, right.
So
I couldn't agree more.